everyone. Good evening. This is Pablo Agrio with Second Chances. Uh, Today, we're going to be talking about a topic that most people, I think, don't know anything about. And I hope to share something with you guys that you find interesting. And, you can take some of what I share with you and use it as a trampoline to go research it yourself and find out, how it works in your particular state or wherever your locality may be. Um, but before we get into the meat and potatoes of the program today, I just want to say if you like what you hear, please hit the like button, subscribe, share, let your friends know, family, associates it. We're trying to educate folks, talk about, some things that we believe most people are not talking about. It's not subject matters that I think that the community needs to know, but that it's not something that we spend a lot of time discussing. We know that attention is drawn to so many different things throughout the day, and these things, they don't hit you in the face until you have to deal with them yourself, and then you realize that there's more to it than meets the eye. So I, I have some material here that I printed out that I want to share with you guys. I just want to make sure that I give it to you straight, that I'm not just shooting from the hip and talking about things without having any facts. So uh, the subject matter is civil debt, and we're going to start with a little definition of what civil debt is. Is the loss of all or almost all civil rights by a person due to a conviction for a felony or due to an act by the government or a country that results in the loss of civil rights. So that's basically what civil debt means. And, why is this important? Well, most people think that if they come face to face with the long arm of the law, that means you get arrested for crime, you get prosecuted, that it all begins and ends with whatever sentence you're handed down by the judge at the trial. And that's not the case. Once you become a convicted felon, you go to prison, you know, there's a whole lot of other things that come into play that has to do with your rights. You go to prison, you basically are considered civilly dead. Now, most people hearing what I'm saying right now will say, well, nah, that's not happening here in the United States. And maybe the word or the term civil debt is not used in today's society. But the acts that are attached, or the consequences that are attached to being civilly dead, are still being enforced and implemented in many localities. And so, as I said at the beginning of the program, I will share with you what I have discovered through research and what I have experienced in my own life. And then you guys can then take that little bit of information and then research it for yourself and see how it works in your neck of the wood. So I want to start off by reading or sharing with you this article that I found about a situation that happened in Rhode Island. And so it says that Rhode Island considers anyone sentenced to life in prison to be civilly dead, meaning they have no civil rights. And it says here that the law dates back some 100 years and stems from ancient English common law. So basically, the effect of that is that prisoners are declared civilly dead, and they cannot sue or raise complaints about abuse or mistreatment suffered while in prison in state court. Uh, Now, they highlight the case of an inmate that was uh, was attacked or suffered an injury while he was in prison, and it says here that a Boston gang member accused of murder was awaiting trial in a Rhode Island prison where he was attacked by another inmate with a razor. The attack left him with scars across his face, and he attempted to sue, alleging that correctional staff knew that of the planned attack and did nothing to stop it. The case reached the United States Supreme Court in 2018, and the United States Supreme Court denied his suit, saying that he was legally dead and could not sue anyone because he was an inmate, right? So currently, there are between 240 prisoners in Rhode Island that are serving life sentences. And state legislators have attempted to change the civil debt legal status. But as recently as 2007, they introduced a bill to try to repeal that. And the then governor vetoed it, writing that persons who are sentenced to the remainder of their life in prison are there because they have been found by a jury of their peers to have committed the most serious possible crimes against society, in many cases offenses that have stripped another human being of his life. So therefore, he did not think that they had the right to sue anybody. Okay? So another inmate was burned while in prison because he rubbed up against an exposed steam pipe. And then when he went to the infirmary, they gave him an insulin injection that was contaminated with the blood of other inmates. Now, he tried to sue the state based on medical care, improper medical care, and the suit was denied because they claimed that the inmates are civilly dead, and basically, if the state, this is what they wrote, if the state choose to not feed these individuals, deny them medical care, torture them, or do anything short of execute them, they have absolutely no redress available to them from the state court. Now, I want you to think about that and let that sink in for just a second about what these people are, this is what they claim or how they feel about these things, and this is written in law. So when you go to court and you get sentenced for a crime and you go to prison, you begin walking down a dark corridor that basically says you are not a part of society anymore and you have none of the rights that are afforded to regular citizens. And this is, a difficult thing to understand and accept in today's modern society. But it's a reality for the hundreds of thousands of men and women who are incarcerated right now in states across the union. Now, some states will tell you that, yes, it's true that when a person is convicted of a crime and they go to prison, most of their civil rights are, put on hold, but that they recoup them once they are released on parole. And that's not necessarily so, because even after you're released from prison and you're placed on parole, parole authorities can attach a number of restrictions to the kinds of things that you can do, where you can go, who you can associate with, et cetera, et cetera. And you basically have no Fourth Amendment rights. They can search you wherever you at. They can come into your place. They make sure that once they put you on parole, that if they need to come get you, that there's not going to be anything holding them or keeping them from doing that. So, uh, and you will suffer those consequences for as long as you stay in parole. In addition to that, even after you get off parole, there's still some other consequences that you have to deal with. For instance, you may not be able to vote in general elections. You may not be able to run for public office, hold certain jobs, et cetera, et cetera. And, you know, who knows? If you fall in the category of certain sex crimes, when you get parole, you have to register. You got to let authorities know about your whereabouts. Now, some people may argue some of these things are not all that bad, or they're necessary for the protection of society. I'm just giving you some examples of some of these consequences that come with, violating uh, criminal law, and how the long-term effects of them that go way beyond just the primary sentence that you receive. Now, uh, I want to share with you guys, some of the history behind this thing here, uh, so that you can take a look and see uh, the reality of this situation. I have here an article that was found in one of these uh, law uh, magazines that has to do with the subject. So this is something that others, that are involved with the law have looked at and are aware of, but that the general public doesn't really know much about. So in the introduction, it says that uh, borrowing from its English forebears, the United States once had a form of punishment called civil death. So right away they're telling you that it's not called that anymore. Civil debt is extinguish most civil rights of a person convicted of a crime and largely put that person outside the law's protection. Civil debt as an institution faded away in the middle of the 20th century. Policymakers recognized that almost all convicted persons eventually rejoin society, and therefore it was wise and fair to allow them to participate in society with some measure of equality, right? But civil debt has surreptitiously reemerged. It no longer exists under that name, but effectually a new civil debt is meted out to persons convicted of crimes in the form of a substantial and permanent change in legal status. It is done this way by a network of what they call or refer to as collateral consequences. So a person convicted of a crime, whether misdemeanor or felony, may be subject to disenfranchisement or deportation if he's a non-citizen, criminal registration and community notification requirements, the ineligibility to live, work, or be present in a particular location. Some are not allowed to live outside of civil confinement at all. In addition, the person may be subject to occupational debarment or ineligibility to establish or maintain family relations. While the entire array of collateral consequences may not apply to any given person, the state is always able to add new disabilities or to extend existing limitations. As a practical matter, every criminal sentence contains the following unwritten terms. So you're sentenced to do time in prison, and you hear the whatever the number is that you're going to be going to prison for. But what you don't hear is what is the underlying condition that you're going to face. And that means that once you're sentenced, the law regards you as having a shattered character. Therefore, In addition to any incarceration or fine, you're subject to legal restrictions and limitations on your civil rights, your conduct, your employment, your residence, and even relationships. For the rest of your life, the United States and any state or uh, locality where you travel or reside may impose at any time additional restrictions and limitations they deem warranted. The power to do so is limited only by their reasonable discretion. They may also require you to pay the expense of these restrictions and limitations. Now, that's a mouthful. And I know that those of you who are out there listening to this, or those of you who may tune in later and listen to this, you may find that hard to believe, but this is a reality. Now, for many people convicted of crimes, the most severe and long-lasting effect of conviction is not imprisonment or fine. Rather, it is being subjected to these collateral consequences involving the actual or potential loss of civil rights, parental rights, public benefits, and employment opportunities. Why is this important? Well, uh, the term incarceration implies that the most typical tool of the criminal justice system is imprisonment. Right now, there are 2 million people in American prison and jails. 2 million people in prisons and jails across the United States. A huge number, but one which is dwarfed by the 6.5 million or so on probation or parole. Now, think about that for just a second. 6.5 million on probation or parole. That means that in certain communities in this country, just about everywhere you go, the person that you walk past on the streets may be an ex-convict, a parolee, or someone who did some time in jail. And, doesn't look like it. You can't tell by looking at them, but it's a reality. And so if these numbers keep growing and all these men and women are suffering these collateral consequences, the impact that this have on our society is major. Now, in localities where, say, for instance, an ex-felon cannot vote, that means that all these people are watching the political machinery go about its business, electing representatives, passing laws, doing what they do to keep society moving forward, and they have no say so in what is taking place. They cannot cast a vote. They have no voice. I I think that's insane. The vast majority of people who have been convicted of crimes are not currently in prison, as we indicated. However, because of their criminal records, they remain subject to governmental regulations of various aspects of their lives and concomitant imposition of benefits and burdens. People convicted of crimes are not subject to just one collateral consequence or even a handful. Instead, hundreds and sometimes thousands of such consequences apply under federal and state constitutional provisions, statutes, administrative regulations, and ordinances. As one Ohio court recognized, disabilities imposed upon the convict are part of the punishment and in many cases the most important part. Check that out. Part of the punishment and in most cases the most important part. As a practical important as collateral consequences are, in a line of cases examined by the courts, the different courts, uh, they have held that they're subject to extremely limited constitutional regulation. Extremely limited. That means that even if you were to challenge some of these collateral consequences in court, your chances of winning are slim to none. Because collateral consequences are deemed to be something other than criminal sanctions that can generally be applied without notice from the court or defense counsel at the time of the guilty plea. Moreover, new ones can be imposed retroactively after plea bargains have been made and sentences fully satisfied. What does that mean? Well, when they say that they can apply it retroactively, that means that it can go back in time. Doesn't have to go forward or go from the time that they gave you the sentence. If they think that they want to impose a little extra punishment on you, they can make it go back retroactively and apply it further back so that you can suffer even more punishment. So these are some of the things that are happening out there right now that people don't know much about, but they should. And it's interesting that not not very long ago, um, this is a very extensive subject matter, and it would take more than one program for us to cover all the nuances, all the little things that are part of this. But I just wanted to give you guys a taste of some of the things that are happening in our society right now that people don't really talk about, but that they're causing a lot of consternation to millions of people that are living in our society right now. And I always like to juxtapose what is happening with in these particular instances with some of the other issues that we have that seem to garner most public attention in the country because of the television media and the all the the social media, the attention that they put on these things, and they keep bombarding people with disinformation, and how some of it may be significant, of course, and they may need reporting, but um, we have to consider that one of the issues or subject matters that comes to my mind is some of the immigration issues that we were constantly arguing about. I mean, you have the issues at the border, whether or not the open border is a good thing or whether or not we should secure our borders. Then we have the issues of whether or not once immigrants come into the country, illegal immigrants, that is, or undocumented aliens, if that's a better way to put it, when they come into this country, what kind of rights do they have, benefits, et cetera, et cetera. And I find it crazy anyway, myself. I don't know how other people may feel about it, but I find it crazy that you know, a person can come into this country as an undocumented alien, you know, didn't apply for a visa, didn't go through the process, just showed up at the border, came across, and then overnight they have a myriad of protections and rights and benefits, and and there's government agencies that are looking out for them and trying to accommodate them. But you have citizens in this country that uh, commit a crime, and it's not enough that they were sentenced to prison and done time, sometimes a substantial amount of time. And but once these men and women are returned to society, they continue to suffer these excessive punishments, in my view, long after the fact or of the matter. And uh, is that fair? I don't know. It's a question that I ask, that you know those of you listening, those of you that may be interested in this subject matter, I think it's worth discussing it. That's just one issue, the immigration issue, but I'm sure that we could think of many other issues that are happening here with different communities that are fighting for rights, fighting for survival, fighting for recognition, and they have voices in the legislature. that are looking out for them and are making sure that their rights are protected and their voices are heard. But this particular community, uh, ex-felons, uh, lifer inmates, or whatever you want to call them, there is no one out there that is looking out for their interests, and there's no one who is examining the existing state of affairs, the laws, the restrictions, the punishments, all these collateral consequences that we talked about that affect how a person can make a living, where do they live, what kind of employment they can get, how they participate in the political process, uh, whether they can, whether it affects their relationships with their families, et cetera, et cetera. And you know, uh, we need to have a discussion about these things and try to understand why is it that this is necessary. Isn't it enough that a person went to prison, did time, and then rejoined society ostensibly as a rehabilitated person? Shouldn't he be free and to regain his civil rights if they were, put on hold while he was incarcerated, and to move on without having to jump through any kind of hoops uh, in order to regain his footing? A lot of people, a lot of states nowadays, I'm kind of coming up on the time here, but I just want to leave you with this final thought. Uh, I have an interesting statistic here that says that uh, only about 20 states in the entire union allow uh, ex-felons to participate in the political process, meaning that they regain their right to vote once they leave prison. Uh, Only recently, in the year 2020, did California voters uh, approve or pass Proposition 17, which in essence uh, gave ex-felons the right to vote again. However, that comes with a caveat. You have to apply and register to vote in order to regain that right. Just because you're out on parole doesn't necessarily mean that you can just go cast a vote at an urn. You have to apply, you have to register to vote, you got to go through the process. There is a way of doing this. You can Google that, and there are forms on the internet that you can fill out. You can send them in to the particular authority or agency, and then once they put you back in the system, then and you become a registered voter, then you can go back and start participating in the system. But pay attention to what I'm saying. Only 20 states. That means that a good 30 of them, 31, 32, still have laws in place that says that if you went to prison on a felony, that once you get paroled or you get released, you can no longer participate in the political process. Anyway, I hope that that subject matter was of interest to you, that you learned something that you hadn't heard before. Like I said, if you like it, please hit the like button, share. Please share with your friends, associates, co-workers, anybody who you think that may be interested in this subject matter. Some relatives, people that may be in danger of losing their freedom. They may want to know about these things because this sometimes these things can have long-term consequences that you have to deal with, and they don't go easily. They don't go away easily. So again, thank you very much for listening. This is Second Chances with Pablo Agrio. We'll see you next week. Peace out.